If I hadn't been in my office that night when my brain cells playing hide and seek with those...
Wonderful. How would you like not having to earn a living?
Dick Powell sang Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Then he knocked someone's teeth out. This is Murder, My Sweet, the 1944 film that invented film noir as we know it.
Want to make a statement? The boys tell me I did a couple of murders.
And murdered Dick Powell's musical career in the process. And the story behind the camera, just as twisted as the one Marlowe was chasing. The $2,000 gamble that changed everything. RKO bought the rights to Raymond Chandler's Farewell, My Lovely for $2,000. $2,000. For context, that's about $35,000 today. They'd already butchered it once in 1942 as The Falcon Takes Over, stripping out Philip Marlowe entirely and plugging in their B-movie detective series. But studio boss Charles Crooner saw something everyone else missed. The book didn't need much adapting. It was already a screenplay waiting to happen. So he assembled a team of hungry B-movie talent ready to prove themselves. Producer Adrian Scott, director Edward Dmytryk, and a has-been crooner desperate for a second act. The budget? $400,000, generous for a film like this. The profit? $597,000. Not bad for $2,000 and a gamble. Billy Wilder's Rejection. Dick Powell wanted to play dirty. He'd been stuck singing in musicals for a decade, watching his career circle the drain as he aged out of juvenile leads. When Paramount announced they were filming Double Indemnity, Powell begged for the role of Walter Neff, the insurance salesman who commits murder for lust and money. Director Billy Wilder said no. Wilder thought audiences could accept Fred MacMurray as a killer because MacMurray played nice guys in comedies. But Powell, the man who sang Tiptoe Through the Tulips, that was a bridge too far. So Powell got passed over for another song and dance man, reinventing himself. The rejection stung. Powell refused to sign with Paramount and got himself suspended. His career was in freefall. Then RKO came calling. Studio chief Charles Crooner wanted Powell for musicals. Powell said he'd only sign if he could play Philip Marlowe first. Crooner, inspired by MacMurray's success in Double Indemnity, agreed. Wilder's rejection became Powell's resurrection. Nobody wanted him. Director Edward Dmytryk was horrified when he heard Dick Powell was cast as Marlowe. Years later, he wrote, "The idea of the man who had sung Tiptoe Through the Tulips, playing a tough private eye, was beyond our imaginations." Raymond Chandler himself was against it. Producer Adrian Scott thought it was career suicide. Powell's own wife-to-be, June Allison, read the script and told him he'd be a laughingstock. One actor Dmytryk approached sent the script back with a note, opened by mistake. Dmytryk was so insulted, he never offered that actor another role, but Crooner forced the issue. Powell had to screen test, even as a supposed star, and the test convinced them. RKO offered him a multi-picture deal. Here's the thing, Powell understood something the doubters didn't. His musical comedy timing gave him access to Chandler's sardonic wit. His vulnerability made Marlowe human instead of a cartoon tough guy. And his desperation to escape typecasting, that gave him the edge Marlowe needed. Raymond Chandler later called Powell his favorite Marlowe. The title that almost killed it. The film premiered in Minneapolis in December 1944 under its original title, Farewell, My Lovely. It bombed. The marquee read, Dick Powell in Farewell, My Lovely, and audiences thought they were getting a musical. Powell's old image was so strong that people assumed he was crooning to someone named Lovely. The studio panicked. Audience Research Inc. surveyed viewers and confirmed the worst. The title was box office poison. RKO delayed the New York release and changed the name to Murder, My Sweet. The film opened in New York on March 8, 1945, and suddenly it was a hit. One title change saved Dick Powell's career and helped birth film noir. In the UK, they kept the original title, Farewell, My Lovely. British audiences apparently trusted that Dick Powell wouldn't be singing. The actresses who wanted to switch. Claire Trevor and Anne Shirley hated their roles. Trevor was tired of playing bad girls, floozies, and femme fatales. She wanted to play Anne, the sweet stepdaughter. Shirley, typecast as wholesome good girls, was dying to play Helen Grail, the seductive, murderous blonde. The two women conspired together, pitching the studio on a role reversal. Shirley later recalled, "Claire and I put our heads together and conspired to reverse the female casting. But it all did us no good. The studio refused. As Shirley put it, Claire went back to being bad and fascinating, and I went back to being good and dull. Trevor would get the last laugh. Her performance as Helen Grail is considered one of the definitive femme fatales of the 1940s. This is a new channel, and I am really looking to bring you some great noir content. If you like this video so far, take a moment to subscribe. There's so much more darkness to explore. Standing in a ditch. Mike Mazurki was 6 feet 4.5 inches tall. Dick Powell was 6 feet 2 inches. That's only 2.5 inches of difference, but Dmytryk needed Moose Malloy to look like a giant looming over Marlowe. So for many scenes, Powell had to stand in a trench. When that wasn't enough, they built sets with slanted ceilings that created forced perspective. As Mazurki walked toward the camera, he seemed to grow. For Mazurki's iconic entrance, reflected in Marlowe's office window, Dmytryk couldn't make the reflection large enough. So he placed a sheet of plate glass between the camera and Powell's desk and reflected Mazurki in that instead. On screen, the glass is invisible. The effect is eerie and unforgettable. Powell spent the shoot either standing in holes or getting beaten unconscious. Playing Marlowe meant playing a punching bag. Chaos on day 1. The first day of shooting was pure chaos. The crew was so rushed that they forgot to call in a makeup person. Claire Trevor had to do her own makeup, including applying it to her legs herself. Meanwhile, the wardrobe department was literally sewing Trevor into her dress while they set up the first scene. Between takes, Powell entertained the cast by doing impressions of himself as a singing juvenile from his musical days. It must have been surreal, watching the man mock his old persona while building a new one. Despite the chaos, they got the shot. Production ran from May 8th to July 1st, 1944. 44 days to make a masterpiece. The drug sequence that defined noir. When Marlowe is drugged and held captive in a sanitarium, Dmytryk created one of the most visually stunning sequences in film noir history. Powell falls through a sea of faces, the camera pulling back and accelerating as it moves away, making it feel like he's tumbling into an abyss. The technique was borrowed from Hitchcock's Saboteur, but Dmytryk pushed it further. The black pool became Marlowe's recurring nightmare. Every time he's knocked out, the darkness swallows him. Dmytryk used double exposures, Dutch angles, and disorienting close-ups to create a fever dream. This was 1944, decades before CGI. They did it all with camera tricks and practical effects. The drug sequence prefigures everything from Vertigo to Requiem for a Dream. Critics later argued this sequence made Murder, My Sweet one of the first films noir to use surrealism to depict psychological breakdown. It's still one of the most visually innovative scenes in the genre. Raymond Chandler's favorite, Until Bogart. Murder, My Sweet is considered the most faithful adaptation of Chandler's work. The author himself called it his favorite and praised Powell's performance. Coming from Chandler, a notorious curmudgeon who hated what Hollywood did to his books. That's high praise. But then, The Big Sleep came out in 1946 with Humphrey Bogart as Marlowe, and Chandler changed his mind. Still, Powell's Marlowe remains the template. He's not superhuman, he's broke, middle-aged, getting beaten up constantly, and barely holding it together. He wears a piece of cloth as a belt because it's wartime, and he can't afford leather. He's got holes in his undershirt. When Helen Grail seduces him, he knows it's phony, and so do we. Powell made Marlowe vulnerable. That's what made him dangerous. Anne Shirley's last film. Murder, My Sweet was Anne Shirley's final film. She was 26 years old. A month before the film opened, she married producer Adrian Scott, the man who made the movie. She retired from acting immediately after, walking away at the height of her career. Shirley demanded one thing for her role: a mink coat. She'd spent years playing working-class good girls. If she was going to be typecast one last time, she at least wanted some glamour. The studio gave it to her. It's one of the few moments in the film where Anne Grail looks like she belongs in the world of wealth she's trapped in. 4 years later, Shirley and Scott divorced. By then, Scott's life had imploded for reasons far darker than a failed marriage. The Hollywood 10. Murder, My Sweet was the first major success for producer Adrian Scott and director Edward Dmytryk. They'd been working in B-movies, and this was their shot at the big time. It worked. They reunited with Powell for Cornered in 1945, and then made Crossfire in 1947, a groundbreaking film about anti-Semitism that earned multiple Oscar nominations. 2 years later, their careers were over. In October 1947, Scott and Dmytryk were called before the House Un-American Activities Committee. They refused to testify and were blacklisted. Both men were part of the Hollywood 10, a group of filmmakers who went to prison for contempt of Congress. Scott served 1 year. His career never recovered. He died in 1973. Dmytryk also went to prison, but in 1951 he cracked. He named names, including his old partner, Adrian Scott. Dmytryk's name was removed from the blacklist. He directed for decades after, but the betrayal haunted him. The team that created Murder, My Sweet destroyed each other. Protecting the Star. In the climactic beach house shootout, Marlowe dives for a gun just as it goes off in front of his face. To protect Powell from the blast, Dmytryk used the same plate glass trick from the film's opening. The actor had to hold the gun in his left hand, so the reflection would show it in his right. It's an invisible effect that most viewers never notice, exactly how it should be. Film noir was built on tricks like this. Limited budgets forced creativity, and creativity became the genre's signature. The censorship changes. The novel had plot threads the film couldn't touch. There was a storyline involving gambling boats off the LA coast. In real life, mobster Anthony Cornero ran an illegal gambling fleet just outside the 3-mile limit, hosting Hollywood's elite. RKO didn't want to draw attention to someone with that kind of power, so the entire subplot was cut. Then there was Florian's nightclub. In the book, it's a club with an exclusively black clientele on Central Avenue in LA's Black District. Making that change meant the scenes wouldn't have to be cut when the film was distributed in southern states. It was pure cowardice disguised as pragmatism. The same racism that shaped the production code shaped what audiences in different parts of the country were allowed to see. Even with the compromises, Murder, My Sweet pushed boundaries. The sexuality, violence, and moral ambiguity on screen were miles beyond what most studios dared. Powell's yacht and Bogart's legacy. In the 1940s, Dick Powell owned a 55-foot yacht called the Santana. He sold it to Humphrey Bogart, a lifelong sailing enthusiast. Bogart loved that boat so much, he named his production company Santana Productions after it. The yacht became famous as Bogey's boat, achieving a celebrity status of its own. It's a strange passing of the torch. Powell, the man who defined Marlowe first, selling his yacht to the man who would eclipse him in the role. Powell never seemed bitter about it. By then, he'd moved on to producing, directing, and building 4-star television. Never saw an Oscar. Murder, My Sweet was lavishly praised by critics. The New York Times called it pulse-quickening entertainment. Variety said Powell's performance was potent and convincing. The Mystery Writers of America gave it 4 Edgar Awards: Best Motion Picture, Best Screenplay, Best Author, and Best Actor for Powell. But the Academy Awards ignored it completely. 0 nominations. Meanwhile, Double Indemnity, the film that rejected Powell, got 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. The winner that year? Going My Way, a light-hearted comedy about a priest. Film noir would have to wait decades for respectability. Claire Trevor, the Queen of Noir. Claire Trevor appeared in 7 film noirs during the 1940s: Street of Chance, Murder, My Sweet, Johnny Angel, Crack Up, Born to Kill, Raw Deal, and Key Largo. She became known as the Queen of Film Noir, a title she both earned and resented. She was tired of playing bad girls, but she played them better than anyone else. Her Helen Grail in Murder, My Sweet is as iconic as Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity. Trevor's career revitalized after this film. Studio boss Charles Corner had specifically intended Murder, My Sweet as a showcase for her. It worked. She went on to win an Oscar for Key Largo in 1948, playing another tortured, damaged woman. But she never escaped the shadows completely. The real Marlowe, Humphrey Bogart, played Marlowe in The Big Sleep. Robert Mitchum played him in the 1975 remake, Farewell My Lovely. James Garner, Elliot Gould, Liam Neeson, they've all taken a shot at Chandler's detective. But Powell was first. And for many, he's still the best. Not because he was the toughest, but because he was the most human. Powell's Marlowe is a guy barely scraping by, getting his ass kicked constantly, wearing the same undershirt for a decade. He's a middle-aged man with a code he can't quite explain, even to himself. He's not a hero, he's just a guy who won't quit. That's why he works. Murder, My Sweet didn't just save Dick Powell's career, it invented a language, the visual style, the moral ambiguity. the broken detective stumbling through the wreckage of other people's sins. Film noir was born here, in the shadows of a $2,000 gamble and a crooner who refused to sing anymore. What noir classic should I cover next? Drop your pick in the comments and hit that like button. Let's keep the darkness going.